All right, good morning. So I want to make sure the caffeine isn't completely worn off yet. Work our way. So as you mentioned, I'm going to talk a little about driving high-performing teams of sales coaching based on my firsthand experience building and founding the global sales coaching program at Google. But first, share a little bit about myself, if this clicker will click. I'm clicking it. Here we go. It is not advancing. Here we go. Tech issue number 1 of the day goes to Jeff Jaworski. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. It for real is not clicking though. I'm laughing and crying at the same time.
You got this.
Thanks. In the back, do we have another clicker that works? Maybe? Okay. Well, while you do that, so we all know 2 things happen for our sellers. One, working now? Awesome. Maybe. It's not. So I'm going to keep going. So 2 things often happen with our sellers, right? During presentations. You're given 30 minutes and all of a sudden something runs long and you have 20, right? And then, oh wait, the tech is not working and I have to figure out how to do this presentation without my slides. So here we go. We're going to give that a try. So a little bit about me. I've been in this space for over 20 years, and I've worn a lot of different hats. I started nearly a decade on the agency side. I made a lot of really important buying decisions. I, in fact, not to also date myself, collected quite the list of business cards, had them wrapped in rubber bands. I had so many of them, like trading cards, you know. Had the Todd Johnson when he was over at Google, and then when he was at Yahoo, and all those good things, right? Then I moved over to the other side of the table, and I was at Google for 12 and a half years. The first 8 years as a frontline seller and sales leader, managing a 9-figure portfolio. And then I transitioned over to enablement. So going back to the career conversation, I moved to enablement, and what I would tell you is I had literally 0 experience in enablement, but what I did bring to the table was I knew what customers experienced and expected of us, and I also knew what the sellers really needed. So with that being said, if I were to flip forward, oh, is it working? Oh, here we go. I got to go back. Okay. So I've had a lot of experience over the past 20 years, right? And the one area I would just tell you I'm incredibly, privileged and uniquely was able to do was found Google's global sales coaching program. It didn't happen overnight. So I'm going to start with a story. This all started, I'm going to flash back 5 years ago. It was an opinion in an email. 5 years ago is a long time, by the way, so I'm going to try to pack as much learning into those 5 years as I can for the group today. That is 2 years before COVID, if I want to make sure this really feels very, very long to you. But here's the 2 things. The opinion. So as I mentioned, I was a customer for a really long time, and then nearly a decade as a seller and a sales leader. When I decided to make the transition over to enablement, I was very open and honest up front. I said, listen, I know nothing about enablement. An ID in my previous world was an industry director. An ID in my new world was an instructional designer. I had no freaking clue what they did. Here's what I did know. I knew what worked for our sellers and our sales leaders. I was experiencing it as a learner, and I said, I can help us actually be better for our sales force. So my opinion was that we need to go back and actually pull back the curtain and go help the sales teams, okay? We're gonna talk a little bit about how we did that. My first month in, I'll openly say, I had no idea what that meant yet. I was having like one-on-one coffee chats with curriculum managers and instructional designers and like, what do you do? Like, just tell me like your job, right? I experienced a lot of these things, but I just didn't know how it kind of all worked, right? And it was a really big organization I was joining as well. Then I get an email forwarded to me from our VP. First month in the role. Email says something to the effect, it's 2 sales leaders, they say, we are exploring doing a 20% project where we'd like to put a sales coach in our sector. VP forwards the email to me, just with, hey, this sounds great, meet Jeff, he just joined the team, feel free to talk to him about it. Okay. That seems like a very VP thing to do as well. Steve, where are you? Do you do that? Okay. So I'm like, great, I'll have the conversation. I actually knew the two sales leaders because I came from the sales side. I'm like, awesome, let's have the conversation. And as we talked through that, I said to myself, like, oh my gosh, this could be the opportunity right here to actually help them. So a couple things we talked through. One, 6 months prior, we had just launched a new sales methodology called the Google Way of Selling. And I said, my number one agreement we need to make is that we are going to have a unified, simplified, aligned way we're going to expect our sellers to show up and sell. We're going to agree upon that, right? We're going to partner together. We're going to set the right goals. We're going to build a proof of concept around this. So an opinion in an email started it all. But we needed to have a problem to solve. I knew if we just did a 20% project and we had a sales coach in there, they were just doing stuff, it was not going to sustain. So with that, the problem was something I've experienced at every side of the table. Before I tell you what it is, let's see if you can guess. Just yell it out. What's the problem? What are we trying to solve?
Bad discovery. Too much crap.
Too much crap.
Bad discovery.
Bad discovery.
More money?
More money, misalignment. We're going to get into some of those things. Deal stalling. Oh my God, we have problems. We got a lot of problems. Okay, those are problems. I agree, those are all problems. Here was the problem we went to solve. Ineffective customer meetings. For years and years, when I was a customer, I sat through, apologies for some swearing, and this is for emphasis, I sat through a lot of shitty meetings where the seller was not prepared. They were showing up with what I could tell was a patch quilt deck. In fact, fun fact for you, we jokingly one time deleted a logo from a deck, and guess what was behind it? A different company's logo. And then I deleted it again, a different company's logo. Unbelievable, right? Then you transition to the sales side, and similarly, we're so focused on our needs and our wants, which I'll get into in a moment, that you don't actually have the right kind of conversation with a customer. In fact, the best customer meeting I ever had as a customer was the one when they passed out the bound deck, and we were about to have the 17th conversation about all your stats and why I should spend money with you, and then the sales rep said, you know what, can we just put this to the side and have a conversation? To this day, I still remember that as one of the best meetings I ever had because we had a real conversation, and for once, they were actually gonna listen to me, like what I might need from you, right? So this was the problem that we were gonna go after. So now I'm gonna ask you to take a guess. Okay, like we talk about this stuff all the time. You see it on LinkedIn, productivity, bad meetings, too many meetings, COVID made it worse, all this other stuff. How many meetings, customer meetings will happen by the end of the conference today? Yell out a guess. What comes to mind? She sees me look at, go ahead, throw it out there.
I was gonna go, like, in this company group or like in general? Like
Just in general, across the board.
across the board?
Yeah.
A million.
A million, okay? Do I have more than a million? Less than a million?
More than a million.
More than a million, okay.
Infinite sign.
Infinite, lots of meetings. There will be 15 million customer meetings in the US alone by the time we are done today. And 1 in 3 of those meetings will be deemed by the customer as ineffective. 5 million of those are bad. That's a big problem. And it will cost companies up to $283 billion. And again, this is also, by the way, in the US alone. So imagine that at a global scale. So I think the problem is big enough. We have a thing we want to do. We want to coach our sellers. We want to make them better. We want to have more effective meetings. We have a problem to solve. What I will share with you is that problem to solve, the one stat line, which for proprietary reasons, I'm not telling you the real stat, but for proprietary reasons, I'm not telling you the real stat. The one stat line sold in the entire program. That is what got the entire program funded, one problem to solve. And why should we care? So I mentioned, we know this is an issue. We talk about a lot of bad meetings, a lot of bad internal meetings, things of that nature. Every customer moment really matters. And what we found at Google was there was a correlation that every 1 point in customer satisfaction led to up to 4 points increase in revenue. So when we go back to talking about enablement, whether you call yourself sales enablement, revenue enablement, GTM enablement, we are here to make our sellers better, and we are here to help the business make more money. So with that, I'll flash back forward 5 years later. An opinion in an email turned into an award-winning, highest demanded program at Google globally. This program is not required. This is an opt-in program. Managers participate in the program. Sellers participate in the program. We have people come to us and ask, how can I be a coach in this program? This program delivers scale. It delivers impact. It delivers unprompted testimonials on a near daily basis. And guess what? It's all because we are here to truly help them. So with that, my purpose today is to pack 5 years of learnings and key shifts that drove higher performance at Google with sales coaching. What I hope you will gain is inspiration to bring these shifts back to your organization to drive higher performance for your org and your customers. But before I do that, I just want to check, are you on board with how we're going to use the rest of this time, or are you sitting on your phone? I'll take the claps, some thumbs up. All right. In the virtual world, I would just be like, give me like an emoji, give me something so I know we're on board here. Great. All right. So here we go. 5 shifts in 5 years that made this program possible. And by the way, I'm going to talk to you about this in the context of the sales coaching program, but I can tell you with confidence as I go through these, you could apply this to your entire enablement strategy. So here we go. We're going to sit on this one for a minute. This one's important. I just told you we have a lot of really bad meetings. Shift number 1, address the how, not just the what. So when we were working through this at Google, as I mentioned, we had just launched a new sales methodology. And man, we're amazing at the what. We know all the outputs. How many meetings should we have? What does our pipeline need to look like? What are the features we need to adopt? What's the next feature they need to adopt? How many demos should we do? All these things, right? How many C-level meetings should we have, et cetera? The challenge with that is we lose sight of our customers' wants, our customers' needs, our customers' opportunities, our customers' pain points, and we really lose sight of how we show up in those moments because we are too focused on our stuff, our what. So for example, at Google, there's specialist teams in search, specialist teams in programmatic, specialist teams in video. You know how many specialist teams there are in the how? None, until this program came to be, right? So that was a big piece for us, is really addressing the how, bringing specialism, as I like to call it, in the how. So let me bring this to life for you. When we first started this and we had put the 20% project together, that was our first kind of proof of concept. I actually was coaching with them. I was like, you know what? I'm going to coach with you. I just want to see how these kind of sessions go, what we're learning, what our sellers are kind of experiencing. No joke. First coaching session validated the whole thing for me. Here's how it went. Hi, customer. I have 3 things I'd like to talk to you about today. First thing I'd like to talk about is my product X. Second thing I'd like to talk about is my product Y. And the third thing I'd like to talk about, if we have time, is if there's anything top of mind for you. It took every ounce of my being to not like lash out. But instead, calmly, okay, great, thank you for sharing that. You know, we go through the coaching session, it's an hour long, and start posing some questions. And you know, one of the simple questions was, hey, seller, like, what if you were to flip this? Can we just do a run of this where you actually lead with the customer? Role played it out, and it just transformed everything from, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of doing it this way, which is just unreal, right? You take that one time and then go back to the number of meetings we're having and how many are ineffective, and you see the opportunity. So addressing the how, not just the what. But what we also knew was we then have to define what actually is an effective meeting. How do you have an effective meeting, right? What meeting are we even having here? Are we in discovery? Are we ready to pitch? Did we already close the deal and we're trying to upsell? What are we doing here, right? So what we did was, first and foremost, let's be clear on the meeting you're having, what stage you are in the motion, and then let's give you simple, scalable, repeatable skills that you can practice and apply to have a more effective meeting. So I'm going to verbalize these for you, and I'll try to go slowly. 5 skills that we selected and packaged within the Google way of selling to drive a more effective meeting. Skill number 1, an effective opening. So after I got through my storyline, you may have noticed me do a thing called what we call a purpose benefit check. Every meeting should have a clear purpose, a clear benefit framed in the customer's language, and you check in before you move on to make sure we have alignment. And if they don't agree, we take a learner mindset, we understand more, and we decide whether or not we need to pivot. So number one, effective opening. Number two, whether you're in a discovery call or potentially a call that turns into discovery, have a structured way to do discovery. What are some of the big questions you want to ask? What are the big objections you might face? What are the business objectives? What's going on in their macroeconomic or microeconomic environment that might be affecting how we partner? Actually dig deep and understand what's top of mind for the customer, so we have alignment around that. Number three, when you go through the presentation, have a clear framework for actually how we do that. Too many decks that are kind of patched together, the classic Franken deck or quilted approach. So he said, look, let's be clear. Why should the customer care about this conversation? So again, selling in the sales coaching program, we had one stat line around ineffective meetings. What should they do as a result of why they should care? And then what is the impact to their business? So again, I know we have our own goals, quota, things of that nature, but if you are selling things based on what they care about, recommendations for their business, and impact against their business, I promise you, you will meet and exceed your quota. Don't worry. The last two. Number four, objection handling. More times than not, you will face some sort of objection in most meetings that you have. So we gave them a framework to think about how to handle the objection. The primary piece, hopefully you're not shocked by this, is you go back into discovery. If somebody objects to your solution or says, we don't measure it that way, or we've tried this before, it doesn't work for us, don't go into fight or flight. Don't defend your stance. Ask questions. And with that additional information, you can then diffuse the objection with empathy, care, understanding, and deliver a solution to address it. And then last but not least is how you close. How many meetings, raise your hand or otherwise, or smile or laugh or cry, have you been in where someone says, sorry, we're a minute over, sorry, we're 3 minutes over, sorry, we're 7 minutes over, little chat, sorry, gotta drop. That was the decision maker, they're gone. And you're left with well, now what do I do? Now I gotta send another email, book another meeting, what's the next step here? So we gave them a very simple framework of how you close a meeting. We pushed the teams to reserve time for the close, and then clear steps on how they actually close that meeting out, including checking with the customer, did we meet the goals of the time we spent today? Schedule the next meeting if we need to, align on action items, thank them for their time. So great, cool, we're gonna address the how, we're gonna spend less time on the what, we're gonna have more effective meetings, we're gonna use these skills. I'm gonna give you a trigger warning before I flash to this next slide. Here's shift number 2. If my clicker will click it. This clicker, I don't need it, guys. I prepared. I did a lot of coaching on this, I promise. Shift number 2 is stop checking boxes, start changing behavior. As an enablement organization, how often are you faced with a plan that either is associated with, here's the trainings we need our sellers to take to certify or comply with something, or, I think SEC posted this recently on LinkedIn, some problem is found, some issue is found, and a request comes from sales leadership saying, we need all sellers trained on this by the end of Q2, and it wasn't even in your plan. That totally never happens, right? The enablement train doesn't swing through and crash into the car. Okay. The challenge with that is a game of whack-a-mole. The more that you check these boxes, yep, we trained our team to be more empathetic. We trained our team for more resilience. We trained our team to ask better questions. We trained our team to do X, Y, Z, whatever, right? If you don't do anything else afterwards, it will not matter. A week later, it could be the best training they ever took. 90% of that information is gone. So I'm gonna challenge this room. The next time you are asked to do something that is gonna check a box, The question I'm preparing you with is, then what? Then what are we doing? Because if we just check the box, we already know 90% is gone in a week. What's the point, right? Think about the simple things that you need to do on a repetitious scale to drive impact. Which leads me to number 3. So even if we build something, a system in place like we did with the sales coaching program, and you have repetition in place and they can do it more often, things of that nature, what's really important is making sure it's truly happening for them and not to them. So if you flip to the other side of the coin, when we talk about compliance trainings, what we typically see, if you set a quarterly learning goal for our sales force, and if you're in a similar space, what typically happens? They finish it in the last 2 days of the quarter because they have too many other things to do. And by the way, they're doing it while they're trying to close their gap and hit their quota, right? Or they're getting emails that say, deadline, need you to finish that objection handling course in 48 hours. They're not happy. Even if that's a helpful training experience, they're not happy about it. They're just getting it done because they're being told to get it done. The beauty of the sales coaching program is we gave them simple, scalable, repeatable ways to get better at what they need to do, which is sell. The beauty of it is they can come into a coaching session, they can bring their issue, they can tell us what are the things they need to work on, the open, the close, the objection handling, the storytelling, whatever that might be. We can then coach them through that, and they will immediately walk out with benefit and feel more prepared to do the thing they need to do to be better at their job and deliver outcomes. So it's really important for us to think through how are we making sure that this is happening for them, not to them. And I'd encourage us to ask ourselves that question. As we go through the plans, if you were on their side of the house, would you be happy and excited about this? Do you think this is going to help you, right? So let's be really thoughtful about the benefit at the end of the day for the end seller, end manager in this case. Which leads me to shift number 4. Meet them in their flow, not your flow. Here's what I mean by that. If the sales organization can already predict when training is going to happen based on a Gantt chart, based on a dev cycle, we have already missed an opportunity. There will always be times where there's a new thing to build, a new thing to address, a training we need to update, et cetera. That of course still is the case. But the big opportunity for us is rather than saying, all right, we're ready, here's the training program, come take our training, we're here, come do this, or here's the workshop dates. You flip it and you actually say, when we have this available, we are ready, come to us and here's the benefit you're gonna gain. And what we did with the coaching program was we provided booking slots, availability, and aligned with the business on the most important times and initiatives they wanted to focus on. And the beauty of that was then the seller comes to us and says, hey, I have a meeting with Target CMO in 2 weeks, I need help with this. Great, what do you need help with? Every time I go pitch X product, I get faced with Y objection. Great, let's focus on coaching around that. Meeting them in their flow also means it doesn't feel like training. They're looking at this going this actually helps me and you're helping me when I need help. When we pre-plan things and we launch our product with all the fanfare and all the communications and all the alignment and then set out workshop dates, in a lot of cases what's actually happening is the seller says, yep, that's not relevant to me or not the most important thing for me to focus on, or the workshop they got signed up for happened a week after the CMO meeting. They're like, Adam Sandler, that would have been useful yesterday, right? That doesn't help me anymore, right? So let's be mindful about there's always sales moments and emotion happening every single day. We can't just be helping them within our dev cycle. And that brings me to shift number 5. In order for this to truly work, we need to be in it with them. We cannot be throwing training at them. The way we thought about this at Google was 2 things. One, in our structure, we assigned a business partner to every president, every regional president. That person's sole responsibility is to understand their business, understand their challenges, be the voice of the business back to the L&D or enablement organization, and then be the voice of the enablement organization back to the business. And what we would do is we would create joint learning plans. We stole a page right out of the sales team's book when they do this with their customers and said, we want to make sure we have a joint plan in place where we agree on the priorities, we agree on our goals, and we have the right set of OKRs to support you truly in what you need. The second piece with the coaching program, we embedded the coaches in the business. So each VP got a coaching lead so that we were actually sector specific. And that coaching lead would then have a coaching plan for the VP and the org. How many coaching sessions do we want to target? And again, this wasn't required. These are just targets we're setting to support them. How many coaching sessions do we want to target? How many managers do we want to bring into the program? Yes, managers were involved in the program and actually asking to be involved in the program. So we were able to train the managers on these skills to then be better for their sellers as well. And then we would lock arms, partner on the biggest deals to coach against, the number of coaching sessions we're aiming for, what's the impact we're trying to drive, what's the second level of detail. And guess what? The beauty of that was they knew what we could coach on, which was a lot of really important skills, and it mitigated the freight train. It mitigated the, wait, we have another thing, right? Because we had a joint learning plan that said, here's the things we're focused on, you agreed, we have a steering committee, we have governance in place, and we have a coaching team. So when AI became a really big thing and the sellers were struggling with that, we said, great, let's have the coaches come in and understand what are the big things that you guys are facing and challenged with. What questions might you need to ask customers? What objections are you facing? How can we work through that? And then we felt like an always-on element to their business. So be in it with them, don't throw it at them. The beauty of this was I had a coaching lead come to me and oftentimes would say, hey, Jeff, like things are going great, but honestly, like I kind of feel like I'm not really part of the enablement org. I kind of feel like I'm like part of the sales org. And the way she brought it to me, it sounded like it was a bad thing. My response was like, honestly, that's great, because that tells me that you feel like you're a part of the business and the business feels like we're a part of them. So that was a really important piece, to share as well in terms of the impact of embedding it. So with that, here's the 5 shifts. Shifting from focusing on the what, our products, our features, our demos, our metrics, our quota, all the outputs, really get laser focused and honed in on the how, the skills, the behaviors we're trying to drive to deliver more effective meetings in this case. Shift number 2, stop checking boxes. You can blame me if you want. Go back to your org, stop it, and start changing behavior. Identify the behaviors you're looking to change and how can we make those sustainable and repeatable over time. Number 3, the learning needs to happen for them. This should not be an experience that happens to them. To the degree we can stop saying, you have a deadline, get this done in the next 48 hours, and we can actually bring experiences that are in their flow and help them, the better off we will be. So being more in the flow of their work, being there when they need us, and then really being a partner, truly being a partner, having joint plans in place, and having agreeable, mutually beneficial outcomes. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and try to summarize our meeting today. But before I do that, you might ask me, well, did this even work? Like, okay, great, should I bring this back? In the 2 years that the program has been fully live, fully funded, fully invested, we delivered over 5,000 sales coaching sessions. Again, they were not required. Sellers opted into this. After 3 straight years of meeting effectiveness being in decline, we raised meeting effectiveness by 3 percentage points, and our partner satisfaction went up by 9 points. If you go back to the status shared up front, every 1 point of satisfaction correlates to around 4 points of increase in revenue. So this became an investment for the business. This was no longer seen as a cost. Remember, we're here to help the sellers. We're here to help them get better and do what they need to do, which is drive revenue. So with that, we sought out today to share 5 years of learnings and key shifts that drove the sales coaching programs and some shifts that you could bring back to your organization. My hope is that I've inspired you to bring these shifts back to your organization. How did we do? I see some thumbs over here. Good? Great. Okay. My action for you. Bring these 5 shifts back to your organization. Have a conversation. Think about this in your 2024 plans. How can you apply this moving forward? My offer to you. If you need help in this space, if you're curious to learn more in this space, feel free to reach out directly to me. I'd be happy to have a conversation. And with that, I'm going to leave you with my favorite result from this program that validated it more than anything I have shared with you and will stick with me forever. And that is this. Our sellers are people too. They have imposter syndrome. They struggle with this stuff. It's harder than it's ever been before to be out there. And to know that we were having an impact on the person and not just on the metrics and the work meant the world to us. So with that, I will say thank you. And I think I have like a minute left for a question or two.
Hold this. There was a point in your presentation you said start changing behavior.
Yeah.
How did you do that? That is like change management is one of the most difficult things that organizations face.
Yeah.
How do you start changing behavior?
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to answer this in there's 2 ways I would think about this. So changing the behavior to actually get the coaching program to happen. One of the behaviors we had actually changed as an organization was a lot of times in enablement, if we're not doing it for the entire org, we don't do it, right? We go, oh, we're not serving everybody. We're not going to do that thing. And I went to our VP and I said, that will not work. We have to prove this first, right? So we built a proof of concept. And then as we started to show the impact of that, that started to drive the behavior change around thinking differently on investing in the how. In terms of changing the behavior of the sales force, that is the beauty of coaching, right? Because what we were doing was the seller could come in and work through something. One of my favorite analogies, one of my coaches would say, we will get you from awkward to awesome in 60 minutes. And I will tell you, most of them started out pretty awkward. And if they didn't come to us, they would have been pretty awkward in front of the target CMO, right? So the second piece of this was we were very open up front to anybody coming in for coaching. And then as they saw the impact and as we employed what I call a snowball strategy, pack the snowball, show people the impact, then we started to shop it around. We started to build a business case around that. Another sector was interested, and then it turned into a global program.
Did you do like multiple? Well, good morning. Did you do like multiple? So you'd have a training program. Would you follow up? Like what did I want to be a little more specific about that.
It's not a training program.
An enablement program. Did you follow up with them saying what worked, what didn't work? Like what was you have this session.
Yep.
And then afterwards, are you doing any feedback on that? Continuous coaching, like what does that look like?
Yeah. So a seller would go through a coaching session, for example. After the coaching session is over, we do feedback within the session and after the session. How impactful was this for you? And then oftentimes they would come back for more coaching. But we can also go back and check in and say, hey, how did that go? What did you learn from that experience? What feedback do you have for us as we continue to move forward with it? The key is getting them to actually keep coming back. Because what we found is if we do the training just one time, then no matter how good the training is, in most cases that stuff dissipates in a pretty quick period of time. Is that helpful? All right, thank you. Harry.
Oh, thank you. Hi, my question is about when you were participating in the coaching, were you also then gathering feedback from the coaches to identify trends that they were seeing for, gaps or discrepancies in skill sets across the sales force that you were then able to then parlay that into training programs to, impart new skills on the entire sales force versus all like the one-off coaching?
Yep. Yeah, great question. Admittedly, we were just scratching the surface on that. And I can tell you, our coaches were like, Jeff, oh my God, we are closer to it than anybody. After thousands of sessions, seeing, what they're struggling with, what's going well, what's not, what are they working on the most. If I was honest with you, is that being perfectly employed in our curriculum team today? No. But that is a massive opportunity. for us to actually say, now we're hearing that like we're like really in it at a level we never have been before. How do we now culminate that, take the themes, take the feedback, and then further inform the things that we prioritize? So great question.
All right.
All good?
Yes. Thank
All right. Thank you.